So, hi there, my name's Saul. I work for the Kent Highwell Partnership as a forest school practitioner and trainer. I'll just share my... And I'm going to talk a little bit today. I'm going to introduce you to the principles and ethos of forest school. So very, very quickly, a little bit about me. Hang on, that's not working from the beginning. Saying my internet is unstable. It is not obeying me. There we go. So I'm going to introduce the principles and ethos of forest school a little bit and talk about what they are, try and unpick a few things, you know, the myths and common held ideas about it. And I'll pick them a bit. And usually use examples of from my practice of some things like happen to hopefully illustrate it for you a little bit. Very quick introduction about me. My name's Saul. I'm the one on the right. I'll be working in practical conservation and environmental education since 2003. I qualified as a forest school practitioner in 2012, and I've been a forest school trainer since 2016. And I work for the Kent Highwell Partnership, and we are there delivering training on a really, really wet, muddy day at our permanent site at Bedgebury. Now, our training very, very quickly. There's quite a lot of this, a little bit of this, and there's mostly that. That is us producing our world famous green Thai curry. It's wonderful. All done at Bedgebury. Bright Box is the name of our training provider element. So I'm going to talk you through the forest school principles now. Now, the Forest School Principles are created by the Forest Schools Association. Now, the Forest School Association is sort of the professional body for forest school. But what they definitely are is that they created a forest school level 3 qualification, because before they did that, there was lots of different qualifications floating around. They didn't really offer the same amount of staff, they didn't have the same level of study. So the Forest Schools Association created this qualification, which is really like the gold standard for forest schools training. And all the different open college networks in the country, most of them, not all of them, most of them adopted this. And so the principles are part of that. And so that's why I'm using these particular principles, because they're sort of generally accepted nationally, if you will. So let's have a look at the principle. I'm going to go through them and try and unpick them because they're a little bit, opaque sometimes. So principle 1 is a long-term process of frequent and regular sessions in a woodland or natural environment rather than a one-off visit. Planning, adaptation, observation, reviewing are integral part of forest school. Now, the really key part of this is all about the evaluative planning, where you plan each session based on the previous one. So most forest school programs, the forest school has to be a program. 6 is probably the minimum, 8, 10, 12, or, every week forever would be wonderful. But the key thing is that you might plan to do a certain number, but you don't do all the planning for all of them. What you do is you plan the first one, you deliver the first one, you observe it, you look at the children, try and get an idea of what's happening. And then you plan the second one based on the first one, and then the third one based on the first 2, and so on. So you really try and develop what's happening based on your observations, not based on what assumptions you might have about the group. Then we've got principle 2, forest school takes place in a woodland or natural wooding environment to support the development of a relationship between the learner and the natural world. Now, this is changing a bit, and in fact, because forest school is really seen as an approach and ethos, it is possible to do forest school in any natural space, even if it's a playfield, like a playground school. But the key part of this principle is about supporting the development of a relationship between the learner and the natural world. Forest school, the idea of forest school is to inculcate a love of the outdoors, and it has lots of benefits. Nature magazine published an article where it said that 120 minutes a week in nature is associated with good health and well-being. There's loads and loads of research. I'm not going to go into it now, all the other ones, but there is a clear link, and forest school is something that helps to inculcate that. A really key thing I think somebody once said to me, through forest school we're recruiting the stakeholders of the future into ecology and conservation. Now, Forest School aims to promote the holistic development of all those involved, fostering resilient, confident, independent and creative learners. Now, holistic learning holistic development is an overarching approach where you provide everything the person needs. And in some ways, it's a little bit like learning preferences, except learning preferences are all about thinking, and holistic learning is all about feeling. And so within holistic development, there's a simple acronym that helps, which is called SPICES, which is all the different elements that you need to provide so a person feels completely fulfilled. And they are social, physical, intellectual, creative, emotional, and spiritual. And the nice thing about forest school activities is generally any forest school activity encompasses all of those things, whereas activity in a classroom or even a formal environmental education activity outside doesn't do that. And so it's not as fulfilling an activity for the feelings of a person. What is good, I mean, because it's key that it promotes holistic development, but what is really nice is if you do it properly, it's actually quite easy to achieve that. You give the children affordances and opportunities and they will take it and run. Right, Forest School offers learners the opportunity to take supported risks appropriate to the environment and to themselves. Now, this is quite an easy one. I think we can all appreciate now that children don't really have opportunities to take the risks they used to in the past. And if you don't learn to take risks now, how are you going to deal with risky things in the future? And in fact, I was working with the school a couple of years ago and had like an external structure with metal supporting pillars, and the pillars were padded like the corners of a boxing ring. And I said to the head teacher, I was like, why are these pillars padded? And the teacher said, well, you know, they had complaints from parents who were worried their children would be hurt bumping into these pillars, and so she had them padded. And she felt this was unnecessary, but she, you know, with the group of parents she was working with, she felt it was important to you know, fight her battles, pick her battles that she was going to fight. And so the pillars were padded. But you know, I think this is a really nice example of where we are today, in that, you know, the world is not padded. You cannot send children out or people out into the world with the expectation that everything will be padded and softened for them. And if they haven't had opportunities to take risk and maybe hurt themselves a bit, you know, how they're going to accept it in the real world. So this is a really key principle, something that people can understand really easily and really get hold of. Principle 5, the forest school is run by qualified forest school practitioners who continuously develop their professional practice. Now, with this one, it's quite an easy one. Basically means if you want to run forest school and call it forest school, you need to have somebody running it who's a level 3 qualified forest school practitioner. You can take a forest school approach, you can do forest school type stuff, but unless you are a forest school practitioner, you can't call it forest school. And then continuously maintaining and developing your professional practice is key, really key things. Things like neuroscience and behavioural science and learning theory, it changes all the time. And so you really need to keep on top of it. So any qualified practitioner will be doing this, as well as lots of different practical skills they could bring to any forest school session. Now, this is one of the more opaque principles. Principle 6, forest school uses a range of learner-centered processes to create a community for development and learning. Now, this does go back a bit to holistic learning, where the learner-centered processes are when the practitioner gives the children, the group you're working with, a series of affordances of activities to do that helps bring them together, to work together, to think about learning and to learn about learning together collectively, rather than it being driven by the leader. You know, it's the group that does the learning and does the opportunities and facilitates and gives affordances, but doesn't actually lead. In fact, we probably shouldn't be called forest school leaders, which is what we are known as. We probably should have to come up with a different name, but that would just confuse things, I think. So they're the principles of forest school. So what we can do now is we're going to go through what forest school is not and what it is. And that's a much clearer way, I think, approaching and understanding what forest school is about, and, you know, also what the benefits are. Okay, so forest school is not a treat or reward, is it? Because a lot of schools do this because children see the forest school program as huge amounts of fun. They often try and control behaviour in the classroom by, saying, you can't do your forest school session today because you behaved badly. Now, a really key part of forest school is that behaviour is communication. If children are behaving badly, there is a reason for this. And actually, the children that are behaving badly in the classroom, they're the ones who would benefit more from going on a forest school activity programme than the ones who are being good. And also, I'm like actually, as a teacher who said this to me, you wouldn't say to a child, you've been bad, we're not going to go to a math session, simple as that. But it's not a treat or reward. It should not be treated as such. It should be a regular lesson that all the children attend regularly, regardless of what their behaviour is, because it can only improve things. Forest school is not bushcraft. Now, sometimes I do, if you remember the picture from the beginning of the presentation, I do resemble some of those men in that picture, and I do like a bit of bushcraft. It's a personal passion of mine. But with forest school, there's this misconception that forest school is all about bushcraft and learning to survive and catching rabbits and making traps and working with tools and stuff. And there are elements of that. But forest school is an ethos and an approach to learning, whereas bushcraft is about a series of skills. They can be linked, but they are not the same thing. You can do forest school session with nothing at all. It's just about the approach you take to the session. Forest school is not a one-off session. Remember, we talked about one of the earlier principles about the evaluative planning of it. Forest school does not work as a one-off session. You can have a one-off forest school taster, maybe. You can have, take a forest school approach to your first session. But it's not going to be forest school unless it's 6 or more sessions. And actually, I think a really nice example of this, I was working with a group of children from a local school, and it's just quite early on in my forest school practitioner career, and I took them out on a Wednesday afternoon. One of the people from the school said, "Oh, you're taking out the 15 worst kids from the school. The whole school, well, it brings a sigh of relief when you take those kids out on a Wednesday afternoon." And I was like, okay, well, they were mixed ability in that group and not of interesting behaviours. But I didn't think they were too bad, which is one of the wonderful things about forest school. It sort of absorbs a lot of the stuff. But so we played on the first session. We played a game called 1, 2, 3, Where Are You, which is sort of a hiding game, and it's a really key part of forest school because it builds your boundaries, it builds trust, and it makes sure they come back, and everybody's having fun at the same time. Now, so we played this game. Some boys went off to hide, and they didn't come back. So I had to get the rest of the group together, and then I had to find the boys, and I persuaded them to come back, and they thought this was absolutely hilarious. And I said, okay, no harm done. Everybody's back. Nobody's been hurt, but I think maybe next week we won't play this game. We'll have to do something like together in the group, because if you can't come back when you're supposed to, then we have to play differently. I didn't do it in an angry way, because you don't do that for us. You don't tell them off. You just say, well, we need to just change things so that doesn't have to go. And then the next week, so they had a whole week to think about what's happened, because that's a really important part of forest school, having this 7-day to reflect fully on what's going on. We started the session, and these same boys approached me and they said, we really like that game, and we want to play a game, and we won't run. And I was like, great, we'll do that. But then I looked at the reaction of the teachers that were helping out, and they could not believe that these boys had made that decision, because they consistently behaved very, very disruptively in school, and nothing seemed to work with them. But this simple act of them of saying, well, we just won't do that. I'm not cross, I'm not giving you extra change or anything like that. We're not going to do it next week. And they thought about it and played the game properly. It was really quite amazing, and also created a different relationship between them and their teachers as well, which is another key part of this ongoing thing. But if it was a one-off session, you wouldn't have had that opportunity at all. Forest school is not making fires and using tools. This is kind of a bushcraft thing, because there's a lot. I mean, there is in the forest school train. There's a lot about using tools safely with children, using tools in a particular way. And it can be an important element of forest school, but it's not what forest school is all about. Forest school is taking a forest school approach using the ethos of child-led learning and some other things we'll talk about in a moment. That is what forest school is about. The tools and the fire are brilliant and they're wonderful, but they are not what it is. You can do forest school and never light a fire, never touch a tool. So, what is forest school then? I've told us what it's not about. We had a look at the principles. Let's have a look at what forest schools actually is. So this is one of the key things. There's a lot of key things. When I actually deliver my training, I'm always saying, this is the one most important thing. There's a lot of one most important things. And one of the most important things is the idea that it's process over product. It's not about successfully lighting the fire. It's not about successfully whittling the nice object or making a nice piece of art. It's about the processes by which you get there. It's about communicating your plans to somebody else. It's about developing emotional intelligence to get your point across. It's about understanding the skills. It's about experimenting. It's about all these different things, all these different elements that build up to what may be a successful product or may not be a successful product, but the product is not important. It's all about the process. And Forest School is child-led learning, so the children guide their own learning. And it can be quite tricky. Actually, I did a recent webinar, participating in a webinar, and they were talking about using a to kids come up to go, oh, I want to do this thing. How do I do this thing? You're like, well, how do you do it? What would you do? It's always about reflecting it back on the child, making them think about what it's all about, what they want to do, how they're going to do it. Very, very important. Forest School is play. Now, play is another one of the most important things of Forest School. Play is super important. Now, there used to be this idea, this theory that because children's brains are plastic and they're developing, plastic brains are good brains, very, it's in good condition, and it's developing, and it's good for. My brain is clearly not that plastic at the moment. Works really well. And this idea was that children have plastic brains and therefore they play. But recent studies have shown that play plasticizes the brain. So the more you play, the better condition your brain is in, the better it is to have better cognitive function and think about thinking. So it's really incredibly important. So sometimes I'll bring bags of stuff along to have a really great activity, and the children will want to play. It's child-led learning, so you let them play. You put your stuff down, you shelve your adult expectations of the activity, and you let the children play, and it is really incredibly important. Now, Forest School is probably the prime requisite of any Forest School session. If you can get the children, your group, into a state of flow, you have succeeded in your session. Now, what is flow? Well, I've got this handy diagram here. Flow is about the challenge of the activity going up and the skill of the activity going along. So the skill of the child, sorry, and the challenge of the activity. So if it's too difficult, if the activity is too difficult, then the child will feel a bit anxious and be disengaged. If the child is very skilled and they find the activity very easy, then they'll become bored and also disengaged. And so what the child's going to do, and really what you need to help the child do, is navigate the narrow flow channel in between skill and challenge. Now, in the Forest School setting, that's actually relatively easy to do because they can find their own flow. They can, because they lead in their own learning, they can find when they get something that's getting too difficult for them, they can back off and sort of navigate their own way through it. Whereas if you're doing this in the classroom, because it's a very, very individualistic thing, if you're doing this in the classroom, finding flow in a classroom is incredibly difficult to do, but very easy in Forest School, and also very, very important. It's like one of those moments you look around, everybody's busy, they're all engaged, they're all doing something, they're all in flow, and you think, yes. What Forest School is building resilience. I love a bit of building resilience. It's kind of my motto, really, because whatever else is going on, if things gone badly, it's raining, your top's leaking, the hot water, the hot chocolate's gone cold, everybody's wet and miserable. But what we are doing is building resilience. Building resilience is a really important part, a really, really important thing to do to develop as a full-grown person. You need to know that you can deal with difficulty and discomfort and come out of it and be absolutely fine. Because sometimes children do not have the opportunity to do that. They get everything done for them. Everything's maintained. They're never uncomfortable or in any kind of uncomfortable situation. And they don't have the opportunity to build resilience, because they need to be able to build resilience, because this is linked to the next point about learning to fail. If you don't learn to fail, you don't build resilience now when you're a child, how are you going to deal with really big things when you're later? Because like building resilience, you get a bit wet and you're a bit cold and maybe you have to go home earlier or have a hot chocolate or put a warm blanket on you or something to warm up, or you fail, you fail to light the fire, you fail to build the thing that you wanted to build, things haven't worked brilliantly. But if you don't have those opportunities now as a child, when you become an adult, and the really big things happen to you, like divorce and separation and not getting the job you wanted, how are you going to deal with those really important things if you haven't learned those skills at a young age? And that's another really key skill that forest schools give you. And it is a tricky one for parent helpers, teachers and TAs who often assist in these activities to do, where, can't light the fire. And you say, okay, well, if you feel you've tried hard enough and you want to stop, you can stop. And then let the child make the decision to quit. But sometimes the TAs don't want them to quit. They want them to succeed. They want them to have that product, not thinking about the process. And they really force them into it, or they hold their hands, they do it for them. And, nobody's benefiting from that type of thing. And that is really for me, one of the most difficult things to get across when I'm actually leading sessions, to get the parents, or the adults really, to step back and let the children fail on their own terms and deal with it. Because if you're always going to be stepping in, they're never going to have the opportunity to do it themselves. Forest School is deep learning. So, deep learning. I kind of wonder whether educational psychologists put deep in front of something in the same way that physicists put dark in front of things they don't understand. Deep learning. A nice example of deep learning that I observed, I was running some sessions with children. It was over 3 days. It wasn't a proper forest school. It was actually like a holiday club type forest school, but it's a kind of forest school approach thing. And we're doing firelighting. This is quite in the early days. And I go, okay, so you've got to collect the twigs. They'll be super dry. You sparkle up the cotton wool, and you put very dry twigs on in this manner, and you light the fire. And that's how you make the product of a fire. And one of the boys would just pick up a handful of damp leaf litter and put it on his firelighting platform and spark on it. And of course, it's never going to work. Because the first couple of days, I was like, hey, that's not going to work. Why don't you try this? Use the dry twigs, use the cotton wool, use this, do that. Because if you don't, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to light the fire. But then, after the 2 days of me telling him that he was doing it wrong, which is not a forest school approach at all, by day 3, I thought, well, maybe he's onto something. Maybe he's working his way through something that's really important. And actually, I've always bring this example up because I'm always hoping that a more qualified educationalist than me will come up with a reason behind it. But actually, just putting this presentation together gave me some more insight, because I actually had to talk it through. I had to talk it out to get the timings right, of which I'm going over slightly, but I'm sure it's fine. And it occurred to me that, because he seemed quite a bright boy, he had some indicators of ASD, but he seemed quite bright, good cognitive function, everything. So it really just occurred to me that maybe he just enjoyed the process of sparking, and he had no intention of lighting a fire. He didn't want to light a fire. It was me as the adult observing him, expecting him to light a fire. We're doing a fire lighting activity after all. Why are you trying to light a fire? It didn't occur to him until now, this is years later, that actually he was just enjoying the process of making sparks. He had no intention of lighting a fire. And maybe by putting the leaf mold on his fire lighting platform, made sure that he wasn't going to light a fire, because he didn't want to do that. He just wanted to use the flint striker. Just an idea. I'm always welcome. If anybody's got any other suggestions in the Q&A later, I'm quite happy to listen. And also, Forest School is applying the 6 principles of the Forest School program, the 6 principles of Forest School to your program, which we covered earlier. Okay, so has anybody got any questions? No, I need to stop share. So, right, has anybody got any questions? Oh, I've got what are some ways that Forest School principals be introduced to homeschooling experience at the moment? Right. Well, I've got a question. What are some ways that Forest School principals could be introduced to homeschooling experiences at the moment? So a big thing about Forest School, actually, something I was discussing with Nicola earlier, was saying yes, actually. Where I was working with this group, and this isn't like, this example sort of works, but I was working with this group. At the end of every session, I would say, what do you want to do next week? And they'd be like, we want to build a tree house. I was like, okay. So I bring stuff for them to build a tree house, but I'm not going to show them how to build a tree house. That's not how it works. I bought materials. I had a bit of a plan, so if they were going to do it, I could steer them towards doing it in a safe way. But actually, when the session started, they all just went off and did their own thing and had their little projects and had their games that they played and did the thing. None of them actually wanted to build a tree house, but what they wanted to do was have their imaginations validated. So, oh, can we build a tree house? yes, you can. How are you going to do it? Well, I don't know. But, you know, so maybe with that question about building forest school ethos into your homeschooling, maybe when they say, can we do something, whatever it is, really difficult or maybe impossible, and you say, yes, how do we achieve that? And then you work through it with them, but you don't steer them in that direction. I mean, a very simple one. I had this tiny little boy, and he said he found this piece of bark, and he said he wanted to whittle his name in it. And you know, we didn't. He was too young to use a knife, and the other tools we had really wouldn't work for whittling. But I said, yeah, okay. So instead of saying no, you can't because we don't have the tools, you don't have the skills, you're too young, blah blah blah. And so okay, yes. So how are you going to do it? And he just found a pen and he wrote what he wanted to do on his piece of bark, and that was him fulfilling his idea. Oh, got another question. Springboarding of that question, what can we bring into school settings using these principles, incorporating flow, reflection, resilience building into the current climate? Yes, that's a good question. Wish I'd read it before I'd answered it. I don't know if I've really got a snappy answer for that one. I think it's all about affordances and getting the children to guide their own learning. To the really key part of forest school, and actually a key part of learning, is a thing called metacognition, where you're thinking about thinking, where you understand thinking. So this could be like the situation where things are now, and even if schools go back, some schools go back in some state before September, there's not going to be like proper classes and things, you know, we're not meeting the curriculum anymore. It could be an opportunity to teach children how to think, really, and make them come with ideas, bounce things back off them. As to resources, stuff in the classroom, that's a tricky one. I mean, you know, pen and paper is a very powerful tool, very powerful resource, pen and paper. You can create anything. Anything out of your imagination can be put down with a piece of paper and a pen. And then maybe, you know, they could think about what they want to do, design what they want to do, and then you can bring in some limited materials to do it. Tricky one, quite a big question that. We've got anything else? With the resilience building, I think it's an easy one. You just kind of don't, you know, you let them fail or succeed under their own terms. That's a really important part. You haven't pushed them into doing something or something their own way. I mean, there's a key thing in play theory, a key thing which is called adulteration. And it's where you adulterate, you literally put the adult into the child's play. And they are, you know, they're playing some sort of game, and you step in and say, oh, you shouldn't be doing this way, you should be doing that way, or, you know, you step in some way. And actually avoiding adulteration in any kind of forest school activity is a really key thing, because you always, as an adult, you have all these expectations about what they want to do. Like with that thing where the boy said, I want to whittle something, I immediately thought that he wants to like carve out his name, Gothic script or fretwork or something on this piece of bark, and he didn't at all. But that was immediately what I thought. And I think if you can take a step back from any activity and not adulterate it, I think that would be a massive step forward. Has anybody got any more questions? No? Okay, well, I think we are just up exactly spot on time. I didn't run over at all. Last chance if anybody wants to ask a question. No? Well, thank you very much for listening and watching. And if you've got any questions, then, you know, I'm sure you can pass one through Nicole. I do work for the Kent Hubble Partnership, which is based in Kent. You can contact us through the website if you've got any questions about forest school training, or anything of that ilk. Okay, I think we're done. Thank you very much. And thank you for your thanks as well. There's lots of stuff coming through on the chat. Thank you very much. Oh, and I've got another question. Oh yeah, so just somebody saying thank you, it was interesting. Excellent.